Leading up to the NFL draft, NFL teams are allowed what are called top 30 visits. These are not visits with the top 30 prospects on your big board. Rather, they are an opportunity, to get more acquainted with different prospects whom the team is scouting, but maybe are not that high on. So the big names, probably you talk to them at the combine. Probably your scouts have gotten to know a little bit about them, things like that. This is sometimes used for those larger names to be brought in, but sometimes used for players that do not even get drafted and end up finding their way onto your team via the UDFA process. In an article titled 2025 NFL Draft Top 30 Visits Tracker, full lists of every team's top 32 teams are bringing in for prospects. All 32 teams are bringing in for meetings. This is part of the final pre-draft process from CBS Sports by Shauna McCarriston. We get the following. There are about 8 prospects from the Kansas City Chiefs that they have already had in to talk to or are scheduled to talk to. And for these guys, be prepared to be extremely intrigued, but also, perhaps, ultimately underwhelmed. I'm just going to foreshadow that because we're not talking about the bigger names in the draft, but these are guys, there are a few in there that I think you're going to have a chance to grab late or as UDFA and have definitive upsides. The NFL offseason is flying by, and the 2025 NFL Draft will be here before we know it. In 1 month, the biggest offseason event will kick off at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin on April 24th. Over 3 days, 257 prospects will hear their names called to join the NFL professional ranks. As teams I got to stop just making up words as I'm reading someone else's article. As teams finalize their needs and work on their pre-draft boards, they are also scheduling visits with some prospects they may be interested in when the time comes. Teams can bring up to 30 players for top 30 visits, with these meetings serving as a way for teams to get to know players better and vice versa. The visits are crucial in not only getting to know a player for his on-field abilities, but also for who he is off the field. Isn't that nice? Starting here, so one thing that you will notice with this list, very heavy on offensive linemen, very heavy on big offensive linemen. One thing that is notable about the Chiefs' offensive tackles right now, they are not the mammoth types that the Chiefs have trended towards on the interior. Beginning here, Anthony Belt, North Carolina State, 6'6", 336 pounds, 10 1/4 inch hands, 33 7/8 inch arms, with an 83 1/8 inch wingspan. Ran a 5.26 40-yard dash at the combine with a 1.82 10-yard split. Not particularly impressive there. A 29 1/2 inch vertical. A 107-inch broad jump, that's a good number, especially for a guy who is nearing 340 pounds. A 7.773 cone drill. Anthony Belton, in my opinion, does have starting potential, but he has to work on his feet and his hand accuracy. What I have noticed with him is he punches a lot, but he does not block a lot, right? So he's trying to get the defensive lineman to have to adjust his pass rush, but he's not locking on as much as I think that if he were better with locking on to an offensive lineman, I think he would be drafted higher. I do think Anthony Belton is a draft pick. We'll get into that in just a moment here. He is big, and he plays like a big lineman. He will allow pass rushers into his body where he just envelops them. I think he might be a guard that grows into a tackle. I think this is a guy who's probably too talented and will be drafted too high to really justify trying to sneak him onto your practice squad. So I think that he might be able to get reps at guard early in his career. I don't know if he's going to be able to get reps at tackle early in his career. So you might be able to sneak him onto the field, get him some experience, get his feet wet, and then go from there. You see that sometimes in the NFL. A guy starts at guard before ultimately moving to tackle when the opportunity opens. He is number 98 on the PFF big board and 111 on the Draft Buzz big board. So you're looking at a guy who is right now projected around that fourth round range. That might be a little bit rich for him from what I thought I noticed on tape, but maybe. I mean, if you have the plans to get him on the field at guard early, maybe it's not that big of a leap for who he is. Very large, so that is worth noting. Then we have Mose Vavao from Fresno State, offensive lineman. 6'3", 305 pounds, 10 and 5/8 inch hands, 31 and 3/4 inch arms, very short arms. 5'1", 440-yard dash, so he's able to move a little bit. A 111-inch broad jump, that's an explosive number. A 3-cone time of 7.58, that's a good number. Bench press at 26 reps, like obviously there with the orange color, you're talking about getting and the 50th percentile, you're talking about on the lower side of things, but sometimes that's not a big negative, unless you're talking about a guy with sub 32-inch arms. He is a center. He looks to me like he could be an NFL guy. I don't know that he'll ever be a high-end NFL guy. I think that he might be the Mike Caliendo range of guy. And, every team has to have those guys on there. So if you're getting him as a UDFA, I think that this is someone who's worth bringing into camp and taking a look at. He chops his feet, but he appears to be doing that because he was coached to do it. He does not appear to be chopping his feet in order to gain leverage or traction. He appears to just be chopping his feet the way that you would in clam diggers, for example. But at least they're active, right? We've seen a couple offensive linemen, Darian Kennard, that didn't move their feet. Draft Buzz has him ranked as the 324th overall player. PFF did not have him with a ranking. Then we get into another interesting prospect here, one that, quite frankly, I'm not sure what to do with. Esa Pole, out of Washington State, appears to be 6 foot, so doesn't have a Draft Buzz profile, so I had to go to ESPN to get this. 6'7", 319 pounds, so probably 6'5", 315. A senior, so you're looking at a guy that Bret Veach might not draft, but could pick up as a UDFA. PFF has him ranked as the 296th player. Draft Buzz did not have him ranked as a player, does not have a profile for him. It looks to me like he will struggle versus NFL speed. It gave him some problems at the college level from what I was able to see, but it did seem like it wasn't a profound problem in his game. But I do think it will pose problems at the NFL level. But he might have the athleticism to correct that. He is an athletic-looking guy. He's a guy that looks like so that second point or third point there, I guess, he made big improvements between his junior and senior year, and this even showed up in his PFF scores, and he saw a lot more playing time as a result. It's possible that Esa Pole is a late bloomer. I think I remember talking about him in last year's draft before everyone had declared, but I can't remember if that was last year or earlier this year. Looking at him now, I think that it would surprise me if he gets drafted. It would not surprise me if he makes a team. Not if he makes a practice squad. It would not surprise me if he makes a team. He's a guy that I think might flash so much in the preseason. You pick him up as UDFA, you get him on the field late in your preseason games, and he's one of these guys that might do so well in the preseason that if you cut him and try to pass him through to your practice squad, he ends up getting plucked by another team. I think he does have NFL potential. I think you do have to do some unlocking to get there. They have also brought in Bryce Cabeldue out of Kansas, 6'6", 315 pounds. He started off at right tackle before switching to left tackle for last season, so that is a promising sign because what it means is that he has shown enough promise that the team trusted him to make the leap from left or from right to left. He earned an 80 pass block grade from PFF last season, though his true pass set grade was like a 65. So I'm not sure how the math between those two things works, but that was a massive drop-off. PFF has him ranked as the number 315 prospect. I cannot see him playing tackle in the NFL, and I'm not sure he has the strength to be an effective guard. He looked to me to struggle a lot versus speed. He looks to me, I don't think... So, I think you only really pay attention to body composition when you're talking about fringe guys. Does that make any sense? So if Patrick Mahomes were Patrick Mahomes, but he were the size of Jared Lorenzen, well, guys, he's still Patrick Mahomes. Who cares if he's overweight? I don't know that right now Cabeldue has the body composition for the NFL. If you have the time to stash him on your practice squad, get him in and work on him for a year, maybe he makes it there. I don't know. He does look like he has a little bit of bend to him. So maybe he is athletic enough to make that transformation. I just don't know if I see an NFL guy in there. Then here's a really intriguing one. Gerad Christian-Lichtenhan out of Oregon State, number 318 on the PFF Big Board. He played over 2,100 snaps of left tackle at Colorado and Oregon State. I believe those were the only two teams he played at. It was hard to find some information about him. Now, Steelers Depot, whoever runs that site does an incredibly good job. And I have to give them the props that they deserve. And I hope that they grow ever stronger because they cover the draft very well over there. They cover UDFA level players very well over there. They cover pro days very well over there. So go over to Steelers Depot and show them some appreciation. Look at this guy though. 6'8", 315 pounds, 10-inch hands, 35 and a quarter inch arms, 85 and 3/8 inch wingspan. So you're looking at a guy who's 6'8", over a true 6'8", right? 6'8", and 2/10. I don't know, 6'0", and he runs a 5.37 40-yard dash. Again, not completely, not terribly impressive, the number itself. But you're a guy who's 6'8", cruising towards 6'9", well over 300 pounds, and you're running a 5.37. It's not fast, but it shows that you're at least mobile. The other thing here, 19 reps on the bench press isn't a great number, but 35 and a quarter inch arms. I think that his feet are fast but inaccurate. So he will totter, but he has impeccable balance. Like, I didn't get into his history with a name like Gerad Christian-Lichtenhan, I'm imagining he is perhaps, born in Davis, California. I guess I am wrong. I was going to say perhaps he is European and is a soccer player, but maybe not. So one of the things that you'll notice when watching him is that when he doesn't have like massive hands, 10-inch hands or big hands, but when you're that big, like it's not earth-shattering. When he really gets on somebody, he's on there. And they can get him off balance. And it's a weird thing. Maybe he gets called for holding in the NFL. I don't know. So you're going to want to teach him to use his feet better. But he'll like use that player to readjust his balance and then throw them off balance. So like technically it's not holding if it's in the shoulder pads, if you're not grabbing. I don't know. Holding can be Chiefs tackles and holding. I don't want to talk about it because it's not the regular season, but this could be a real prospect if you can get his lower body coordination better. You're going to have to stash him on the practice squad. I don't think you want to have to draft him, but if you can get him to come to Kansas City as a UDFA, and they're building a team of massive offensive linemen, you can see that with Ethan. I can't remember his name from last year, but the Marshall offensive tackle was a massive guy too, and they're bringing in this guy who's almost 6'9", and then Caleb Etienne out of BYU, 6'8", 320 pounds. He looks like, so I watched his pro day stuff. He looks like a guard when he's on his own. Like when it's just him on tape, he almost looks like Anthony, or not Anthony. I'm not going to remember his name. I'm blanking right now, but Anthony Becht. He almost looks like, I think that's his name. The guy who fizzled out at tackle, but ended up being a guard for the Jets. That's not Anthony Becht, is it? Anthony Becht, is that an ancient? Anyway, doesn't matter. He looks like a guard because he's kind of top heavy. And he struggles with speed, but it seems that the way he struggles with speed is that he ends up getting his feet twisted up. Like between one drop step and the other, he gets his feet crossed, and it's not a slow-footed problem, it's a twisted-footed problem. So if you can coach him into having a good first step, he might not struggle all that badly versus speed. Because he does look like he's mobile. He does look like he's able to get out there. It looks also, however, like he's been so big for so long that he's never had to test his strength or his leverage, and certainly not his strength via leverage. He does not push people like that. So it looks like his form and his pop have gotten lazy. If you can grab him, again, stash him for a year on the practice squad, I think that you could be a couple years away from having a starting right tackle because he does look mobile. He does look strong. There's times where he looks bored on the football field, and that's not something you want to see. But guys, it's a very different motivating factor when you don't have social studies in the morning and you're collecting millions of dollars. That said, having to coach the nasty into someone is not as easy as having to take the edge off of someone. So I don't know if you can unlock that in him, maybe he's got a chance. I do think he would have to be much more aggressive at the professional level than he has been at college. Here's his pro day numbers. Caleb Etienne is a offensive tackle prospect out of the 2025 draft class, scored an official 927 RAS out of a possible 10. This ranked 104 out of 1,419 offensive tackles from 1987 to 2025. So you might have to draft him. I would prefer not to draft him. But you see here, 6'7", a true 6'7". I can't tell if that's 328 or 329. 27 bench press reps with, look at this, 36-inch arms. So these numbers might mean that you have to draft him, and there might be a sort of race up the board for Caleb Etienne, because if this is the athlete that he is, again, those problems with speed look to me, now, look, he does have poor shuttle and 3-cone drills, so I'm not going to ignore that. But watching him move forward, I think what he's doing is something wrong with his footwork. So this might be a guy who, because of his testing numbers, ends up racing up draft boards. Yeah, so watch out for that. But if you can bring him in as a UDFA, that would be a home run, in my opinion. Aireontae Ersery, they've brought in Aireontae Ersery, 6'6", 331, 501 40-yard dash, absolutely mad lad at 6'6", 330. 175 10-yard split, a 111-inch broad jump. That's a big boy to be jumping that far. I'm not going to talk too much about Aireontae Ersery here. If you want my thoughts on Aireontae Ersery, I've talked about him in like 35 videos. At this point, there's a playlist on the channel for the 2025 NFL Draft already, so check those out. And then we have the absolute most Brett Veach thing ever. A Southern Arkansas cornerback. Now, don't think this guy gets drafted. He ran a 4.38 40-yard dash with a 38-inch vertical at, I believe it was the Senior Bowl. But as opposed to his college listing him at 6'1", 185, he came in at 5'10", 185. This looks to me like a guy who could compete for the CB4 spot in the NFL. I left that. I don't believe those numbers are accurate. I wrote that down before I had gone and verified. They are not accurate. He is not 6'1". I am surprised he is 5'10". But he does look like a sudden athlete, and he does look like a guy who these guys are on every roster in the NFL. One of these plucky, small, very quick, very fast guys. He could be a special teams ace early on. I think he could contribute as a cornerback number 4 at some point in his career. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We've had daily uploads for over 2 years now, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.